Can I just repeat a warm welcome to everybody this afternoon, and welcome to this session, Inspiring Young Talent, Investing in Our Future Housing and Care Leaders. I'm really delighted that we've got this session. It's been a long time coming, but we've got a great set of speakers for you, and I'll introduce them to you shortly. But if you're haven't joined us for any of the other sessions this week already, we've had over 3,000 people sign up to all our sessions. And while we've got over 100 or so joining us today, either through live stream or joining us on record at a later date, this has been really record breaking for the HousingLIN. And a big thanks to all the contributors for this festival. This includes our sponsors. And we have sponsors, our headline sponsors and our associate sponsors, and they are Guinness, Tunstall, UKRI and Lovell Later Living, and our associate sponsors, Extra Care Charitable Trust, Faithful and Gould, Housing 21, Invisible Creations, Johnny Johnson, ProCare, PRP and Shakespeare Martineau, without whom this summit would not be possible. So big thanks to both our headline and our associate sponsors. Well, this session is in two parts. The first half, we're going to focus on some key leadership qualities and theories of change and culture, things that need to help us to motivate our staff at all levels at a time of considerable change, of workforce challenges, whatever sector we're in. The second half will draw on the recently concluded HousingLIN Future Leaders programme, something that Suzanne Beach, who helped to develop, who unfortunately can't be with us today. But we are pleased to have 6 of the 7 participants of that programme, and a session that's going to be chaired by Yasmin Hussain, one of the future leaders. But to kick us off for the first half, we're joined by 2 really inspirational speakers. One who I know through the Happy programme, Jamie Bunce, the Chief Executive of Inspired Villages Group, and somebody who has probably found managing me in the past quite difficult, my former boss, visiting Professor Richard Humphreys from the University of Worcester, but also a leading author and his recent book, Ending the Social Care Crisis, A New Road to Reform. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Jamie to kick off, and I'm delighted that you could be with us this afternoon. And I know that one of your team was also on our Future Leaders programme, and we'll hear a little bit from her later on.
Thank you, Jeremy, and good afternoon, everybody. Very much looking forward to being part of this wonderful festival for ideas session this afternoon, and delighted that it's the Inspiring Young Talent and Investing in Our Future. So I think what's interesting for our sector is it's very nascent. It really is in a space where lots can be done. So to bring new talent, to inspire people to come and work within this wonderful area within the UK and the world, to be frank, is really, really exciting. So I'm going to go through a few slides first, if I can get my technology to work, which I think I can. Checking. Okay. Yes, my name is Jamie Bunce. I'm the CEO of a company called Inspired Villages. We're a retirement community operator and developer. So for starters, I was thinking, who are Inspired Villages? Well, we're an operator of integrated retirement communities. We were formed in 2017 when Legal & General made a significant investment into our business. We're now into our 6th year, so we've gone through the classics, startup, scale up, and now into a maturing business. And 2022 was definitely the best year for us. It was a year of stabilization, a year that we're kicking on good growth. And in that, it's all about the talent that works within the business. In 2021, we secured a joint venture agreement between Legal & General, LGC is Legal & General Capital, and NatWest Group Pensions, where we're looking to deliver 34 villages over a 10-year period. We have 8 villages now operating and another 20 in the pipeline, which is in principle around about 55% of our target through this joint venture. For some of you might think, what is an IRC, an integrated retirement community? Well, an integrated retirement community is for people who are over 65, albeit our average age is now 80.1. And it's a mixture of independent and assisted living. And importantly, it's giving people a solution for their later life on their terms. So for us, we do believe that it can be and should be the best years of people's lives. We provide a holistic well-being service, which is really around social, physical, mental, and financial well-being. We have non-regulatory care that is that's delivered through our own on-site teams, and domiciliary care, which is regulated care through third parties. What's important, I think, to say is that many people can live very happily, very independently for their whole lives, and we stigmatise people as they get older. But frankly, you know, I've got an experience where one of our residents up in Cheshire, she ran the New York Marathon 30 minutes quicker than I did not long ago. So these people are very active and really want a strong sense of purpose. So the market we operate in, currently there are over 11 million people in excess of 75 years of age. That's looking to grow to 18 million by 2040. But interestingly, the number of over 80s is expected to double in that same period. Yet in the UK, there's only 80,000 homes within integrated retirement communities. Not a lot. You know, we need more. This is an interesting sector for people to work in. And for us, we're very much focused on driving another 5 more years of healthy living, because we genuinely believe people get younger when they're living with us. Market penetration in the UK is still below 1% in comparison to 5 to 6% elsewhere in the world. And if we are to match that market penetration, there's an undersupply of around about 300,000 homes in the UK as of today, even before the sort of tsunami of older people come you know, into us really. So demography changing, supply imbalance at the moment is the sector that will only go one way, if nothing else, through supply and demand. And for me, when I make a pledge that I want us to be the best in the world, I need to get to 7% of penetration. It is not a lot. It really isn't. And it's something that people who are looking to come into the sector, people who want to be part of it, people who are interested in all that we do, it is a wonderful place to work. There's no doubt about it. So in 2022, the end of 2022, we had 1,003 homes, 1,050 residents. We've actually now got nearly 1,200 residents. We've had a real big push coming forward. So we've had a big shift in the last few months. 1,787 homes underway. Together with you know, our target really of 5,100 homes, we're sort of 55% towards that now. So it's really good. But what's important when you look at those numbers, it is not a lot when we're looking at the amount of supply and demand that's currently in the sector. And I'd say that we are definitely one of the top 3 in this sector. So it just shows that for people looking at it, investors, for local authorities and the like, it is a place that you should really strongly consider. I couldn't do a presentation without talking about ESG and sustainability. We're an operator developer, so we're a long-term asset owner of the property. Therefore, we can look at property through a different lens than a traditional trader developer. We have our first net zero in regulated energy IRC opening this year in Cavington, just outside Dunstable. And anything new we do would be net zero in regulated energy. We have a target of 2030 to be operationally net zero. And a target for that of 2025, which is quite a challenge. The E bit of ESG, I think, is quite straightforward, really. It's just about fixing and how you driving energy solutions. The S, the social part, is the fascinating part, and the social impact that we know we can create within our villages and around the surrounding areas, combating loneliness, creating people to have a much better life, a much engaged life, and much more independent is so important. And to bring it back to this, what's important is to have people and talent that can be able to drive that forward. So we invest heavily in our talent. We have a strong purpose. We're a purpose-led business. We're very proud of our brand and our culture. Critical to us is to have great colleagues, people who are engaged. Critical to that is then having customers who evangelize about what we do. And in order for us to achieve all these goals, we need to recognize potential talent. And for that, we have a circle. really starting with attraction, recruitment, and importantly retaining the best people. It's planning out how we can bring people a fantastic career or careers. It's rewarding people for the services that they generate. It's having a continued degree of learning and development, and it's finding talent and it's nurturing talent with that. And for that, we have to communicate well, we have to manage change, and importantly, we capture data and we learn from it. And for that, we create a very, very powerful strategy. We invest in colleagues for two main reasons: our brand promise of giving people the best years of their life, and actually, we believe that careers should be without limits. People should have multiple careers with us in order for them to get the best out of their own lives as well as ourselves. And for that, it's the ABC: attitude, behavior, commitment, and then train people. So if people have the right attitude, they behave in the right way, and they're fully committed to whatever they do in whatever line of business or even in their own personal lives, then actually that I believe are the three key things to look for. And in Inspire Villages, we have a leadership team. They work with our executive committee on projects. So we challenge projects and we look to sort of drive continued improvement for that. We have a future leaders program. We have a line managed excellence program. We mentor, we coach, both in a style and also personal coaching. And for this, I was very, very proud that in 2022 alone, we promoted 25 colleagues to more senior roles within the business. I'd like to think that my replacement is in our business now. That would be a wonderful solution for us. Quick whistle-top tour, really, of what we're doing in terms of talent. I've got any questions, but I think we're taking questions later, I believe.
Yeah, that's right,
Thank
Jamie. Thanks ever so. That really sets the scene, both of you as a company, but also your vision and ambitions to drive both the quality through the brand, but also in terms of the talent and the workforce as well, and how that relates to the customer. So that was a really interesting take, and I'm sure there'll be questions from many of us later. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Richard Humphreys. Richard, it was really great that you're with us as well. You come from more of a social care and health background, although I do know that formerly you were on the board of Housing 21. So you're one of those rare people who covers the three legs of that stool. So over to you, Richard.
Great, thank you very much, Jeremy. And it's great to be with you, and thank you for inviting me. So if you don't mind, I'm going to turn my camera off because my Wi-Fi signal is pretty dodgy, and it would be disastrous if you missed any of the pearls of wisdom that I'm about to share with you. So if that's okay, I'm going to switch my camera off. There's one slide at the end of this, so I'm afraid you just got to listen to me, which is all the more reason why you don't have to look at my screenshot, my mugshot as well. So I'm going to stop the video. So I just want to cover 3 points, really. One, I want to reflect a little bit on my own leadership journey, which began sometime in the Jurassic period of public services. I want to summarize what are the big changes that affect the role that you're performing now at whatever level and in whatever organization. And then finally, thirdly, I want to talk about what that means for your personal development and offer you some, what I hope will be helpful top tips about your own development. So beginning at the beginning, I mean, my career began way back in the 1970s as in social work. And I spent a few years in practice before getting into supervisory and management roles. I made a sideways move at one point into policy and planning jobs before becoming an assistant director of social services in the West Midlands, and then a few years later, the director of social services, which included responsibility for housing as well. And one of the things I did in that role was oversee the transfer of the housing stock to a newly created independent landlord. And then a couple of years on, I took on the role of local health authority chief exec. So at that point, I was responsible for health, housing, and social care. Social care then included children's services as well as adult social care, which in many places it doesn't now. So it was a massive job, and it was going really well until the government came along with one of its big reorganisations of the NHS. At that point, I went on secondment to the Department of Health, and did various sorts of improvement roles for about 5 years before leaving. And then I spent the last 11 years until COVID came at the King's Fund, which is an independent health policy think tank. And I covered social care and integration of health and social care and housing. And I was doing research, commentary, writing, doing media interviews to interpret and explain government policy. So I did that until a couple of years ago. And now I've reached the kind of portfolio stage of my career. As Jeremy has mentioned, I was a non-exec on Housing 21 board for about 9 years, I think, until 2017. Until recently, I was a non-exec on my local NHS trust board. I've recently been working as a member of the Archbishop of Canterbury's Commission on Reimagining Care. And I do some part-time work for the Health Foundation. So, but the point is this: if anybody had said to me 45 years ago when I began my career that I would end up doing all those different things, I would have said, "Then, you know, you're winding me up." And the thing is, you simply have no idea where your career might take you and what opportunities might arise. So, you know, don't make assumptions about where your career might go. And you know, there will be opportunities if you look for them, and they will be unexpected, possibly. So over that period, how has the leadership role changed? And I think there are kind of three big shifts. First of all, it's a much bigger role. Even when I was a director with housing responsibilities, traditionally housing had been seen as about managing a stock of buildings and building new buildings, not as a set of services for people. It was a very functional, very narrow approach. But now housing leaders, including housing with care leaders, need an outlook that is less about bricks and mortar, more about people and their experience, and has to make a broader contribution to wider policy objectives like net zero, which Jamie mentioned, fuel poverty. There's issues like adult safeguarding that you now have to think about risk assessment, and of course a much more stringent regulatory environment. Within local authorities, the director of housing or the chief housing officer used to be a big figure, but now of course councils have lost their stock, and often because of streamlining of management structures, housing is combined with other roles like social care and sometimes, you know, community development, cemeteries, you name it. You know, you get all sorts. You've got these jobs at the top of local councils that have got huge spans of responsibility. So the content and scope of leadership roles, particularly at senior levels, has changed enormously over the years. And because you potentially face the possibility of covering a lot of different services, the caliber and quality of the team that you have around you is absolutely critical to your effectiveness. The second shift is that I think the leadership role is now much more outward facing than it used to be. Traditionally, your job was about managing a service within an organization through conventional top-down hierarchical management structures, command and control, getting things done by instruction through policies, procedures. That is still important to an extent, except we now have to think more widely about working across the boundaries of different services. A while ago, there were some Wreath lectures by a guy called Atul Gawande, and he called this lecture the century of the system, and he explained that today, in our complex interdependent world, organizations can rarely achieve their objectives on their own. They depend on the cooperation and collaboration with other agencies and organizations. Classic example of that the moment is the crisis we have in our NHS. And I think there's a much stronger recognition now that housing is, as I've said, is not just about bricks and mortar. It's about contributing to much wider policy objectives, health and well-being, our aging population, local economic development, and the right models of social care support for older people. So the need is actually to become system leaders. You're not just managing your own organization, you're working across boundaries. And that's the third big shift, I think, that we now talk about system leadership, working across boundaries, needing a different skill set. It's a skill set that uses soft power of influencing, of persuasion, of collaboration, not just telling people what they've got to do, but actually using that sort of that soft power of influencing. The hard stuff is the soft stuff. It's persuading, it's taking people with you. And part of that new mindset is about creating conditions for innovation and finding new solutions to old problems, especially when money's in short supply. So these days we do talk much more about leadership rather than management, but actually we need both. So, you know, the leadership is often portrayed as the big, exciting, sexy, transformational stuff, the vision, the ambition, direction of travel and so on. But you've still got to have a grip on service. You've got to keep the budget under control. You've got to manage the people issues. And in my experience, the most effective leaders combine the ability to have that strategic vision and lead people towards outcomes that they want to achieve for their people. Combine that with a grip on people and the money and the services that they manage. So it's that mix of transformational and transactional styles, and that's a tough ask actually. Some people, I guess we've all met people who are really good at the transformational stuff, but are absolutely hopeless at the nitty-gritty operational stuff, and vice versa. So I'm just conscious of time, and I think the implications for you as managers and leaders are threefold. First of all, I think it is about co-production, about recognizing the value of co-production. We no longer take the view that people are passive recipients of whatever professionals and bureaucracies decide for them. There is an appetite and an expectation that we work with communities and individuals through co-production. And if you're not familiar with co-production, Google ladder of co-production, and that will kind of explain it more to you. So that's a big change in style. It partly is back to that outward-facing approach. Second implication, I think, is about digital. When I began my career, everything was analog. You made phone calls from a desk in your office. If you went out on visits, you weren't contactable. Somebody would ring the office and somebody would take a message if you were lucky. We communicated via letters and memos. Reports were usually handwritten. The height of technological sophistication was dictating your letter or your report into a dictaphone, which then went into the typing pool. So I mean, all that has changed. And the first PCs didn't come in until mid-80s and weren't in general use, I think, until the 1990s. Social media, if that meant anything at all, it meant having a drink with a friendly journalist. And of course, it's all transformed now. We've got the 24-hour online culture, the immediacy of it all. And that puts a lot of pressure on leaders and managers, in my opinion. Big debate to be had about the benefits and the costs of that, but it's something you have to work with and juggle. The third implication, I think, is about the need for thought leadership. When you're doing a busy, demanding job, your life is dominated by the latest crisis, the must-do, the immediate short-term problems and pressures. There isn't really that much time to think about the challenges that are coming at you, where you need a little bit of breathing time. And I was going to give a couple of examples of that, but I think I'm conscious of time. But there is an issue about how you find time to kind of do that forward thinking, as opposed to just reacting to stuff that from other people all the time. So at this point, I just want to step back a little bit and think about how the wider world of work is changing. So Jerome, if you could bring up my slide, please. So this is from a book called The 100-Year Life, and the link is down there. And as you can see at the top, that traditionally, where we're born, we grow up, we go to school, we then spend a big chunk of our life in work, and then we retire and we do nothing. That's all gone, because we are now face the prospect that we will spend as much time, probably longer, in retirement than we will in our working lives, hence the expression the 100-year life. The authors reckon that around a third of babies born today will live to 100, hence the expression. But that's all changing. If you could press the button, and Linda Grattan and Robert Briggs talk about moving to a multi-stage life, and I was interested in Jamie's presentation. He mentioned people having multiple careers. Well, that is already happening. You know, it's already happening. I've tried to retire twice in the last 15 years and got bored and given up, or something else came up. But jobs are changing, new jobs are coming up, and the skills that we have need to be refreshed. And sometimes we have the opportunities, as I have, to do things that are completely different, that need a new skill set. So unfortunately, I mean, I've reached that happy point where I think I've got the right balance between paid, unpaid, and leisure work. And it's interesting that Jeremy mentioned that I wrote a book about social care reform. And actually, I didn't see that as work. I saw that as a kind of a personal development opportunity, really. I've never written a book before, so thought this would be a good thing to do in lockdown. So it's a whole new world. Let me just cut to my 6 top tips that I would pass on. The first is to think about your own career in the context of not just of the job, but what you want out of life generally, the work-life balance here. And there's lots of issues, I think, not just for women and children, and wanting to have children, but parents of any gender. How do you want to fit this in, and what opportunities might there be? Because work is not everything. Second tip is that you must accept responsibility for your own personal and professional development. Your employer's role is to help you, and a good employer will want to help and support you with that. But if they don't, then maybe you need to look for a different employer. So that's second tip. Third tip is that how you balance the day-to-day demands of the job, which can be absolutely grinding and relentless, with your own development needs. And that's something you really have to work on. And it can be quite simple, like saying, I am going to read that article this week. I'm going to find half an hour just to kind of read that, or I'm going to follow up that example I heard a conference presentation. Something that kind of helps you to look beyond the immediate role. The fourth tip is to get yourself a mentor, somebody who you respect, someone who is experienced, somebody who will give you straight, honest feedback at those times where you're not sure about how to handle a situation. Maybe there's a job come up that you're thinking about applying for, and somebody that can give you wise counsel. And I've benefited from 2 or 3 people in the course of my career who've been a great, invaluable support to me in a very discreet and very confidential way. The The fifth point, and I alluded to this earlier, this isn't just about you, it's about the team of people around you, because you are only as effective as that team. So spending time to develop and nurture your team. A great believer in away days. Again, more time to reflect, the team build, some intellectual respite care to think things through and step away from the hurly-burly of those day-to-day pressures. And the sixth and final point, and then I'll shut up, is do spend time investing in your networks. Like-minded people and colleagues doing the same job or similar jobs in different places, avoiding insularity, and working on that attitude of curiosity and open-mindedness. And this is my final sentence, that is why the Housing Future Leaders Network is so important, and I hope that you continue to derive benefit from it. That's all from me. Thank you.
Richard, thanks ever so. A really powerful tour de force of both your personal journey, but also the insights and the insights and the knowledge that you've shared with us, brewing on your experience. I'm sure we'll come back to a conversation later around that. I know people are already putting some questions in the Q&A box as well. But also many people joining us won't realise actually you were the brains behind setting up the HousingLIN.
Yeah.
and in fact, you know, I was the lieutenant who joined you 20 years ago. So it's
That's
great
right.
that you've continued to link in with us, but also your sixth point was about investing in networks. And what we see is that we want to continue the nurturing that you described. And I think the Future Leaders Programme was really a result of that as well. And I'm delighted that we have most of the group who became our second cohort back towards the end of the 21 and then 22. And we're going to hear from them now. And it's going to be led by Yasmin Hussain, who some of you will know on the call used to be at Foundations, but has subsequently moved to London Borough of Harrow. And in fact, one or two of you have changed careers, but also have been mobile and agile, as Jamie has said. But I think people want to hear from you and not me. So I'm going to leave you to script the remainder of the session, leaving us with about 20 or so minutes for Q&A at the end. So Yasmin and the team, it's lovely to have you all here. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Hi, everyone. So, as Jeremy mentioned, we are the 2022 cohort of the HousingLIN's Future Leaders Programme, and today we will be talking with you about our experiences on the programme. So, my name is Yasmin, and I work for the London Borough of Harrow, and obviously I'll be chairing this session. And the way that this section will work is we'll just introduce ourselves briefly and provide a little bit of background about why we joined the programme and what we hope to get out of the programme. And then we'll take you through a little bit of a journey through our experiences on the programme. So our key takeaways from engaging with the speakers. Ultimately, we felt as though one of the biggest takeaways from this experience was being able to see firsthand how diverse effective leadership can be. So this diversity we saw to be in both the leaders and their approaches and styles, but also in the leaders themselves. But this is something that we'll go on to talk about in a bit more detail later on. Next, we'll have a discussion around the challenges of leadership that our speakers reflected on and how this shapes our understanding of leadership. Finally, we will reflect on the importance of collaboration as a key learning from this experience. So starting with myself, my name is Yasmin, and I took part in this programme as it was encouraged by my manager and my director. And I also wanted to meet other people at similar stages in their careers to myself. Another reason for joining the programme was to learn more about leadership and different stages in the career outside of the role themselves. So the emotions and the challenges that are behind different jobs in the sector. So next, I will introduce Ellen. As Jeremy mentioned, Ellen can't be with us today live, but she has provided a recording for this section that we will play later on. So to introduce her, Ellen Pearce works in the land development and planning team at Inspired Villages, and her motivation for joining the programme, similar to myself, was to meet more people within the sector at a similar stage in their career, and also to learn about leadership and different styles of leadership from different perspectives. So next, I think we have Carla.
Hi all, I'm Carla Resendiz. I'm Product Development Manager at Northcote. We supply accessible and adaptable timber frame kit homes across the UK via offsite construction. My background is in industrial design and user research. So I was interested in joining this cohort because I was running a project which was coming to an end. And I had the opportunity to question myself about what's going to happen next. So I wanted to learn more about how to develop my own leadership style. I knew that there were going to come opportunities, and I just wanted to learn from others and see what were the recommendations out there for heading up into the next career path. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have Darius next.
Hiya, I'm Darius Gadiali and I work at the HousingLIN with Jeremy, Jerome and Sally. I'm a data analyst, and the kind of main reason for joining was that I'm very interested in kind of learning what makes a good leader, and kind of like learning the lessons to see like what to kind of avoid, and also improve my kind of communication confidence and kind of outlook in terms of presentations.
Thank you. Jack next.
Hi there, I'm Jack Baldan. I started this course whilst working for the Arms House Association. I've now moved on to the London Borough of Waltham Forest, and I wanted to join because I did want to meet like-minded individuals, people at a similar stage of their careers. But I'd previously had the opportunity to work with Jeremy and the LIN in my last role, and when the opportunity came up to continue that work and to learn from other leaders in the sector, you know, who am I to say no?
Thanks. And Hayley?
Hi everyone, my name is Hayley Derham. I work as a reporting analyst at Housing 21, who specialise in retirement living and extra care for those aged 55 and over. I wanted to join this programme so that it would help open my eyes to leadership skills and behaviour that are required to help lead teams successfully with confidence, and to help grow my confidence as well.
And last but not least, Henrietta.
Hi, thanks, Jasmine. I'm Henrietta Pizarro. I'm an architect at PNHS Architects based in the Newcastle office. I've always been interested in kind of the old age living and the care and support sector. And I'd also taken up a leadership role at the beginning of the sort of COVID pandemic. So it was kind of two of my sort of main interests coming together when the programme was sort of forwarded to me. So that's why I wanted to join the programme.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. So now we've all introduced ourselves. For a bit of context, the HousingLIN Future Leaders programme was a year-long programme aimed at early career individuals, so individuals with no more than 3 years experience in their current role. And it aimed to help us learn through the lived experience of industry leaders about what inspired them and what stood out for them in leadership. So we had a few different sessions, both online and in person. And in the first session, we had the privilege, in fact, I should say, of meeting the HousingLIN's very own Jeremy and Suzanne. And then in future sessions, we met various different speakers and leaders who gave their takes on perspectives of leadership throughout. In return, we were asked to write guest blogs for the HousingLIN and also to present today. So that is what we'll be doing now. And we wanted to take you through some of the key messages from this experience. So first of all, adaptability and compassion. So these speakers took the time to dismantle the myths surrounding compassionate leadership. They challenged the idea that there was only one route to effective leadership, which involved ignoring emotion to command respect. Instead, they provide lived experience examples of how compassion is actually at the core of working in a sector which is for people. This was something that really inspired me, having studied a politics degree whilst taking part in this programme, which looks at very different types of leadership. So the leaders I was studying were largely uncompassionate leadership. So being able to engage with these empowering leaders firsthand was something that really inspired me and really showed me how nuanced leadership can be. Now, it helped and inspired me at this point that my director, Paul Smith at Foundations, worked really diversely, incorporating technology and apps and more creative ways to work, but then being able to combine that with the leaders on this programme was something that really personally inspired me. So this is the first aspect of diversity, which is diversity in approach, exceeding and challenging our expectations of what leadership truly is. And I think we have our fellow future leaders to tell us a bit more about that now. So Hayley and Henrietta, what were your key takeaways from the programme?
Thanks, Yasmin. My key takeaways had a bit of a consistent theme throughout, and that was being personable. We had the pleasure of meeting leaders across sectors who all inspired us in different ways, and it seems that one of the key attributes for me was being a respectful leader is to have good soft skills. So listening, taking on board new ideas, building trust, having compassion. Communication is also key, and seeking action from that. Being a compassionate leader doesn't mean that you're weak. I think it was evident as well that there's a lot of leaders do have a lot of setbacks, and that failure is there as part of the process. Resilience is also key and plays a huge part to being a leader. Leaders are always learning too and always wanting to do more. I think for me, it was nice to see that all leaders are actually human, and that imposter syndrome still exists at that level. Turning negative experiences into lessons learned and what can be done for improvement, involving teams along the way. So yeah, I think for me, being a personable leader can really help, and respect is gained along the way as a result, starting with the basics, using soft skills are pertinent for growth into a leadership role, and being on this programme has really helped highlight what attributes are needed to become a successful leader. So if I can encourage anyone to join the programme, it is definitely worthwhile.
I think I'll just sort of add and sort of mirror what Hayley's said there, because I think we talked a lot about how to create a sort of an inclusive culture. So encourage people within teams to share their views and creating a safe environment for everyone to do that. And a lot of it was sort of tying back to having that open feedback loop. So both the peers and the superiors sort of were open to ideas of having that feedback, and it not being a one-way sort of thread of feedback and sort of betterment. I think everyone can improve and learn from each other, and it's all sort of down to that team spirit. And the sort of team element being crucial, no matter how big or small the organisation was. From the various leaders that we spoke to, it was kind of talking about understanding and acknowledging the value of that team. And one key phrase that really stuck with me was that no one person has the answer. So it doesn't really matter what position you're in. The most senior member of a team may well rely on and sort of need the support from their team. And it's kind of creating that environment of trust and respecting one another to be able to value your individual skills and expertise. And as the leader yourself, kind of creating an environment where all of those skills can complement one another, so that you become a sort of a very successful and productive team, which usually one would hope would lead to a sort of incredibly pleasant and enjoyable place to work for every individual team member. And I think just lastly, to sort of reiterate Hayley's point, which I thought was really crucial, and I think it's something that I very much have seen in my workplace as well. So it wasn't necessarily new, but it's quite nice to know that it's sort of a general technique that can be used and shared across the board, is talking about and sharing elements of failure, and it not being sort of this taboo subject where, you know, it's hidden away, but actually that it can be a sort of a learning opportunity for everyone, and it's often undervalued in some areas, perhaps more in the public eye, and that may well be down to pride, but I think that comes back to that trusting environment and team that you're creating as a group. And it definitely sort of talking about this in the group with us as all of us on the programme, but also with the speakers, it sort of helped to give that boost in confidence and perhaps make us all not hold back and sort of be worried about failure, because more often than not, and I think it was very generously shared with us from a number of the speakers, that actually before a successful project there more often than not has been one or two sort of failures along the way. So yeah, thank you.
Completely agreed. I would say it really positively challenged how we initially might have thought that the programme would go, seeing leadership that kind of defies what we initially thought. So even in terms of the discussions that we were having about leadership throughout the programme, the topics of conversation were often quite diverse as well. So topics included men's mental health, the fluidity of individuals' identities and marginalised voices. And these are all things that really allowed us to understand how leading with compassion is reflective of the progressive sort of leadership that you need when you're dealing with change. And it was this different aspect here of diversity that we saw in these diversity in discussions, and that was the diversity in the leader themselves. So this is more about the skills in the individual themselves, as well as the broadness of the sector itself that we were all very surprised by when we first joined the programme. So I think we have Carla and Darius to tell us a little bit more about that. So Carla and Darius, what impressed you about the diversity of the leaders that we met on the programme?
So I'd primarily say the kind of diverse professional backgrounds that the kind of leader speakers brought to the programme was quite very varied, and it was quite reassuring to see that, because it kind of exemplified that there's no kind of like one particular way to kind of lead your career. There's several different ways you can do it. And a few of the sessions kind of highlighted the importance of making career choices that were kind of suitable for that kind of person and enjoyable for them as well, rather than primarily only seeking a more senior position. So that kind of diverse kind of outlook about career choices and career backgrounds was very inspiring for me personally. I also, just on the actual blogs itself, the reading some of the other participants' blogs, I found it like the kind of content of the blogs very, very interesting to read. And one of the kind of things that stood out to me, especially around kind of diverse workplace culture, was a move away from kind of very authoritarian styles of leadership towards more empathy and humility. And this was also reiterated by the leader speakers themselves. And one of the kind of other like elements of diversity that I personally appreciated seeing was about the diversity in the skills of the leaders themselves, the kind of balance they brought to their leadership positions, such as empathetic qualities as well as self-leadership qualities. And that was that seemed to be quite important for them maintaining their own energy, as well as kind of consider other people's needs at the same time. So for me, that was the kind of element of diversity. To pass on to Carla.
Yeah, thank you, Darius. Yes, echoing on that point that you mentioned, I think that when we learned about the different experiences of the speakers, knowing their career paths on architecture, care, research, housing development, like it was very interesting to see how they shared their main challenges and how they overcome them and make them like as a tool to shape their own leadership style. So I think that was very, very relevant. And I found it really interesting because of how we develop our career now in these multidisciplinary levels, working with other types of people, other backgrounds. So I think that's very important. Also, that kind of intersects with how we have to assume the new problem solving, as Professor Richard said, like, for example, that's very important in co-production. How can we integrate different disciplines as well to co-create a solution of a complex issue? So that was one part. And I also find it very relevant when one of the speakers mentioned the challenges of sometimes representing a minority group as a member of a board or in other high-level groups or events, as well as getting used to being the one looking different, or possibly, as I sometimes feel, like sounding different. But this is not exclusive to ethnicity. For example, we can still see not only in the UK, but globally, that manufacturing, construction are still male-dominated fields. So when this speaker said, you just need to learn to get on with it, as well as trusting yourself and your experience, that was a huge lesson for me. Like, it connected I would say with other speakers when they mentioned regarding being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So in general, I would say, like, I would like to really take in what Professor Richard and Jamie just mentioned in this like earlier in this session. No? I would say after I understood better that there is no recipe for leadership, like both having empathy, creativity, and passion, having as key ingredients to any other mixture that we may have is possibly the best. So yeah, I would also recommend this program for other future leaders who want to explore their own leadership style.
Completely agree, definitely. There was such a different range of personalities on the program, and with these different personalities came their life stories and the different struggles that they'd experienced. And it was here that we all took a bit of a sigh of relief, as Hayley mentioned. So imposter syndrome and difficult conversations and all of the things that we've been worried about in the first session, where we just met as a group of future leaders, had proven to be true in the leaders themselves. So it was really relieving to us that they all shared similar anxieties and similar experiences we did. And how they dealt with the challenges that they faced was something that really demonstrated to us a significant takeaway for our understanding of leadership. And that was resilience in leadership in the face of change, to really embrace these changes. And I think we have the video now from Ellen to tell us a little bit more about challenges and dealing with challenges.
Yeah. Started. So hopefully you can hear everything Ellen is about to say. The sound earlier on wasn't great, so let's give it a try.
Hello, I am really sorry I can't be there in person today. I hope you're all enjoying the summit so far.
Sound might have
I'm not sure if it's just me, but I've lost sound.
Yeah,
Is anybody...
same here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We did hear it at the start, Jerome, and then it went silent.
I'm gonna try it again. Let's hope it works this time.
Hello, I am really sorry I can't be there in person today. I hope you're all enjoying the summit so far. I wanted to feed in and share some of my thoughts around the themes we discussed in the programme. And this was around embracing change and being a resilient leader. So as you've heard from the rest of the group, we had some really insightful speakers during our year on the programme from very different fields of work and backgrounds, giving a really well-rounded view of the different aspects of leadership. So among other things, one unifying factor within these discussions was the route that all the speakers took to their current roles, and the various twists and turns which happened along the way. And this is something Jeremy also touched on in the kind of conclusion to the programme, where he kind of discussed whether people kind of had a planned route or an unplanned route into their current role, and how they felt about that. So from my perspective, I can find change to be quite challenging in my role as a planner at Inspired Villages, and I have a tendency to plan all aspects of my life, including my career. But hearing about how these changes in the career timelines of the speakers, which included things like redundancies, starting families, or other things such as senior colleagues unexpectedly stepping away and having to fill those roles, and hearing about those really presented new opportunities within those careers of the speakers, and also how they develop their resilience and experience along the way. So one parallel I really found in these examples, and which I see in my day-to-day role in my company, so that's at Inspired Villages, is around how the older generation really embraces change now more than ever. In particular, those, as one example, who choose to move into specialist accommodation, such as the communities that we develop at Inspired Villages. So for these future residents, the reasons that they make these moves can often be unexpected. So it might be for health reasons, such as a fall or the death of a spouse, among other things. But similarly, I find that speaking to residents, they have new opportunities, new friendships and experiences which come as the result of making that leap and that big lifestyle change. So really, the key takeaway from this theme, from my perspective, was really around how actively making the choice to embrace change in your career and in your life can really improve your resilience as a leader, and lead to new unexpected opportunities. So from my perspective, I'm going to be trying to adjust my perspective to embrace these changes day to day and the bigger changes in my career. So thank you to all the speakers, and I'll hand back to Yasmin and the rest of the group to discuss the other things that we talked about. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Ellen. So as Ellen touched on in her presentation, it was the way that these individuals have responded to challenges that really allowed us to think about some key learnings from this experience and being inspired by these individual stories. One of these key learnings was collaboration, as we were told about how these leaders overcame monumental challenges within their lives and in their careers. We learned that collaborating is key. And finally, we have Jack and Darius to tell us a little bit more about that. So Jack and Darius, how did you find collaborating on the programme, both online and in person?
Yeah, thank you, Yasmin. I think the collaborating with, my fellow future leader colleagues was great. It was really, really good to hear from colleagues at a similar position in their careers, and appreciating the diversity of people that make up the group. I deal with kind of policy stuff, but there's architects here, and there's people dealing with much more complicated things than I can ever fathom. And it was great to really learn and understand those different aspects of the housing world. Unfortunately, I suppose we were only able to meet up once in person, but it was really, really, really great. There were a few other takeaways, around this, and I think, thankfully, actually, Richard, Jamie have touched on it, and the rest of the team have touched on it. But what did stand out to me personally was this idea of collaboration. And I think when nurturing kind of younger colleagues, when we're coming in at this stage, collaboration really is vital. If you are a more senior member of staff, if you're a manager, your experiences and insights help us to contextualize our own progress. And I think that's what, we've touched on today. We have to learn to accept failures and hurdles as part of the process. And it's only by understanding, where you've hit those problems that we really get value. By working with us, you have a real ability to make a tangible difference in our own career development. And then, and I think as what's been shown through Jamie, what Inspire Villages are doing, I think you've got a better chance of retaining us, because we've properly invested in the people and the mission and the organization. But how is that achieved? Jamie's talked about some of the physical programs that are run similar to this, but I think one of the big things was break down the hierarchy. I've been in roles now that are very top down and kind of very, and roles where I was able to very easily get in touch with the CEO and have those kind of one-on-one conversations. And it was in those situations where I learned the most. Give us opportunities to work with you on projects, but don't just push the project on us to deal with on our own and see it as a learning opportunity. Work with us, guide us in a way which empowers us to work more effectively. And when we fail, work with us to help understand and learn from the mistakes. I think that it was one of the most interesting aspects for us on the course was hearing from leaders in the field and understanding their journeys so that we could kind of better understand our own. It helped to provide us kind of scaffolding to our own career development. And so, which meant perhaps not thrusting us into more senior roles and just seeing that as a good thing, you've promoted, well done. But it's actually work with us to make a smooth transition up to that role. One of the stories that stuck with me from one of our speakers was an instance where they were kind of pushed into a senior role at a fairly young age without real proper guidance and structure. And in the end, when a crisis hit, that's when all the problems were suddenly laid bare. And I think if any of us were placed in that situation, things become difficult and a role becomes unattractive. So not only does that place a physical burden on us as individuals, but it raises questions about, retaining that person for the organization. Ultimately, I hope that from hearing from us today, you'll be encouraged to review how you and your organization are working with colleagues at the early parts of their career. Investment is vital. Courses such as the Future Leaders Program of HousingLIN has been a great experience, and I know we've all found it incredibly useful. But as is kind of been laid out by Jamie, it's about building a culture in our organizations and actually putting this into practice and empowering us through true supportive leadership.
Yeah, just building on what some of Jack mentioned about the kind of relationship within the organization between like junior staff and slightly more senior staff. Just building on Jack's point about the idea of collaboration. So there's on reflection about that, there's kind of two ways that I see there's collaboration that can come through that, as in if you are guiding someone junior, you are able to actually learn something new from them themselves. There's always a new method of doing something. There's always a way of improving, and you can definitely learn from anyone. And on the other kind of hand, there's if you provide the space and the encouragement for junior staff to grow, it helps both you yourself and them in a multitude of ways. A kind of key takeaway that I took from the program was mentioned by Dan Lyas, and that was to do with kind of ceding your own power to other people, with the kind of backing idea that we can't really do what we do without the help of other people, and that it's very important to give back to these people when we gain a particular advantage or benefit. It's always good to give back. And that just kind of builds on the idea of we're kind of built to work with other people, and everything is more enjoyable and effective when working with people around you. Another key kind of takeaway that I took from the program was mentioned by Jeremy and Richards around co-production. And I kind of reflected on the idea of co-production being a very practical or systematic way to put collaboration into place, where co-production actually presents the genuine opportunity for people that are affected by a professional's work to kind of benefit from the outcome itself. And reflecting on that, a kind of idea that I was thinking about was the difference between genuine co-production and kind of the image of co-production. So it's very important to actually genuinely value the kind of outcome and include the kind of opinions of the people that the work affects itself. And a kind of final important key takeaway for me was from Caroline Bernard around empathy, and that was just about empathy being like the kind of fuel for collaboration, and allowing kind of groups to have the space to share their opinion, to include people, and to kind of actually allow the power to be shared in the first place. So yeah, that was my kind of ideas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And unless any of the fellow future leaders have anything further to add, I don't think you do. No? Okay, brilliant. Well, then I'd just like to say thank you very much to everybody for listening to our reflections of our great time in the programme. And thank you to Jeremy and Suzanne for giving us this opportunity. A massive thanks to all the speakers who took the time to share their inspirational stories with us. So thanks to Francesca Lewis, Dan Lyas, Caroline Bernard, Ella Howard, Sarah Mitten, Maxine Epsley, and of course, Jeremy. Thanks to all of our organisations also for allowing us to take the time to take part in this programme. So that would be Foundations, Northcott, the HousingLIN, Inspired Villages, the Arms House Association, the London Borough of Waltham Forest, London Borough of Harrow, Housing 21, and P&HS Architects. I feel like I've just won an Oscar. Thank you also to 13 Group who sponsored this, and we hope that you enjoyed hearing our reflections today. Please do check out our blogs and you can read about what a great time we had on the programme. Finally, I speak on behalf of the group in taking this opportunity to encourage investment in learning and development opportunities such as this one. It's really allowed myself and others in similar stages of their careers to develop and become stronger and compassionate leaders. So we very much encourage and endorse this programme. Ultimately, fingers crossed, in a good few years' time, we'll be able to give back to this programme what we got out of it, and you'll be hearing from a whole new cohort of future leaders who are reflecting on their experiences after speaking with us. Thank you.
Well, I'm speechless, actually. I'm not often stumped for words, but can I congratulate all of you for having the courage and the ability to articulate, what you've learned, and to share this afternoon those messages with us. It's a really staggering testimony both to your qualities as well as the team around us that help put on this program. So thank you. We've got a series of questions in the Q&A box, but before I go to that, I mean, a couple of little things. First of all, Jamie and Richard, have you got any reflections on what you've heard, bearing in mind, what you shared with us earlier? Jamie, you talked about social impact around investing in talent. Richard, you talked about co-production. You talked about thought leadership. So, Jamie, and then Richard, any thoughts of what you've heard and what you feel that's come out of this?
Well, I feel completely inspired actually by everything that everyone's been saying. I think wonderfully well choreographed, Yasmin, and everyone sort of putting their ideas to it. I think the reality is with a strong sense of purpose, you'll never work a day in your life. And I think for the lot of you, you've shown that in spades. Yet, having a real clear attention to detail. Keep it really, really simple. The empathy is a word that's easily used, but very difficult sometimes to have, especially the point of pressure. And I feel that people on this group and the experiences you're having is allowing you to really empathise around it. But for me, one thing I've sort of got the made sure underwrite from this is the drive that I've felt from everybody on this panel this afternoon. I think I can really feel that sort of sense of passion, that real drive in order to make a difference and to deliver your careers as far as you want to go. And it's up for us as employers to take you on that journey and to be there to help, support, nurture you all as you go on them. So yeah, incredibly impressed. So thank you very much for sharing your stories with us today.
Richard, you?
Totally agree with what Jamie has said, and actually, I've learned a few things from what people have said, and in particular, I was struck by the number of references to compassionate leadership, which I didn't talk about at all in my slot, which was remiss of me, because one of the changes is that it's a harsh climate out there. It's tough. And sometimes individuals and organizations behave badly when they shouldn't. So we talk about compassionate leadership, but one of the things that we can all do individually is model the behavior that we want to see. We, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. So that for me is quite powerful, alongside all the other things that Jamie has said. So keep it up, guys. You're the next generation. We need you.
When we see ourselves as really servant leaders, I think people again speak about that, but I think it's for us with more experience, I think, in order to help serve those who are on their own journey, in order to sort of get people to as far as they want to get to, definitely.
Yeah. Right. Well, look, I'm going to move on to some of the questions. I think some of them have been answered, but I'm just going to run through those anyway. There are a couple of ones which are sort of operational for Jamie, others which are relating to sort of the programme itself, and one or two which are probably, as an aside, things that perhaps the person from Heart of England can email us on our info box. It's more about how do you develop supported living and the like, which isn't quite this session, although we're as a LIN, we are really interested in that. So Jamie, if I could kick off with you, just a little bit about the villages and the integrated retirement communities. I think there's a bit of confusing whether these are operated within a social housing sector or is it predominantly a customer base, which is a private sector one. So can you just give us a little bit of insight there?
Yeah, I mean, at Inspired Villages, we operate within the private end of the market. So we see ourselves in the mid-market, probably sort of bottom part of the top of quartile of the market. So this is private fee paying, where people either buy an apartment, rent an apartment, albeit that we have got an emerging shared ownership opportunity that we are trying to investigate. Reality is, as people get older, they all need support to a greater or lesser degree. So for us as an operator, we've got to look at solutions in order to create that. So that'd be a typical project that we would give our future leaders the opportunity to say, how can we enable great places to live, no matter how much much people have in their bank account or not, because we believe that people have a right for good care. Do we use technology? How do we split it differently so you don't create sort of sections of people in certain places? So it's a challenge for at the moment. We deliver to the private end. We are learning an awful lot off others, Housing 21, Extra Charitable Trust, people like that are experts in this space of how can we create wonderful places for people to live. As Professor Richard said, more than bricks and mortar, absolutely more than bricks and mortar. We've got to try and find ways in which we can enable this growing population of elderly people to be able to live their very best lives, definitely.
Yes, and I think, you mentioned Gifford Lee and Topsham and places like that earlier. I've visited and I can see how the developments aren't just about the individual bricks and mortar. They are part of that wider community and how you engage with those.
It's really, I mean, we've got a thing called Inspired Friendships, which is that's out into the wider community. So we see ourselves as the hub, and out within that, be able to connect to people who actually want to stay in their own homes. Honest, most people actually absolutely want to stay in their own homes, no matter what that is, and we need to find solutions in order to help support people who do want to do that. So through Inspired Friendships, we have get-togethers that drive wonderful solutions to sort of loneliness and anxiety and other challenges people face, no matter how old they are, to be honest, but certainly people who are getting sort of over 80.
And that, I think, links back to some of the empathy and compassion that everybody was talking about as well. There's another question probably for you from Helen, who perhaps links into your investment strategy around personal development, training, mentoring. Where do you draw your talent from? Is it from graduate recruitment, or do you have a CV library, or is it a well-kept secret?
No, it's fairly simple, really. Hopefully via sort of viral marketing in many ways, so people see that we're a good place to have a career, and then tell their friends, tell their colleagues, tell their network. That is definitely an area that we would like to do. We operate a graduate program, albeit small at the moment. We are part of the Armed Forces Covenant. We're bringing people in who have been in the armed forces. It's an important area for us to look, especially as our villages are designed for people who have sort of various challenges in sight or being able to get around. So we can sort of deal with people who've come out of the armed forces. It's in a variety of different sources. What's important for us is for people to have that ABC that I mentioned. People can come in. We've got sort of, when I started the business, it was just like me. There's now 320 in the business. We should, over the next 5 years, be at nearly 1,000 people. So for that, we've got to find, train and retain talent. And for that, they have to have that ABC of attitude, behaviour, commitment.
Yeah. Again, you're very powerful on that. I think a couple of people have answered this, but I'm going to make it open anyway, because obviously those who'll be watching this as a recording may not have seen the question. But it was touched on by many of the future leaders, about that much of the program was virtual. We only had the one face-to-face. And the question is, Zoom is great, but surely collaboration is better face-to-face. Has COVID had a negative impact on the program, or is this now being overcome? So can I ask each of our future leaders, I'll start with my top left corner, which is Henrietta.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I think from my personal experiences that it kind of comes down to personal preference, and I think this has come back to day-to-day being back in the office anyway. And from our practice point of view, we're kind of hybrid working. I've chosen to be in the office every day because that would be my preference. But I think from the course point of view, we are pretty much at other ends of the country. We've got Carla in Scotland. I'm not sure the furthest south, but it's quite far south somewhere. So it's practicality wise, being able to engage on Teams, I think, or Zoom, it has worked really well. But then in a way we probably valued the face-to-face meeting even more greatly when we did meet up together. And we made more of a sort of a day of it, as opposed to just a shorter meeting slot as you would do in the workplace. So I think we've probably been able to benefit from a variety of speakers from across the country because of the practicalities. So I don't think I wouldn't say we've missed out in any way. I think people have different preferences and we've benefited from both really. And again, some of it does come down to being supported by the companies that we work for and being able to have some of the sessions in sort of an afternoon, as opposed to, I mean, to get from, say, Scotland, Newcastle to Birmingham or something, it takes a day or in some cases two. So I think we've benefited in both ways, I think.
Well, you did say it takes a two, and I think, Carla, you're in Wick, so right at the top. So any thoughts about Zoom against hybrid or indeed face-to-face?
Yes, definitely. I was telling Karen in my answer that in my case, if everything was in person, I couldn't have done it all. Like
Right.
possibly I would have only been able to come to one session or possibly two ideally. But I think in my case, having a hybrid was the best. And specifically, I think one session, I think that was my favorite session in terms of, I thought that the group had a lot of cohesion and a lot of story sharing, etc. So I like that a lot. But otherwise, as Henrietta says, like with other speakers, possibly the engagement would have been very difficult to be everyone in the same place, no? So yeah, I would say I really I am so grateful that we had this scheme for this cohort.
Mm. Well, you mentioned that we had the one meeting, and Hayley, you hosted that at Housing 21's offices in Birmingham. What were your thoughts about, well, A, hosting it and the fear of all of us descending from you, but no, more importantly, how did you find the balance between virtual and in person?
I mean, personally, Jeremy, I might only live 8 miles from the headquarters in the office, so you know, for everyone else is a little bit further. But no, I thought it was great. It's great to get together and collaborate, you know. But I think personally for me as well, I think I got out of meeting in person exactly the same as what I would over video. Just to echo Carla and Henrietta's thoughts, I think we're all kind of used now to living to this hybrid way of working, and I think I've received, you know, the same level of information that I would over video. But it was great to get everyone together, you know. I think that was nice. But yeah, I don't think it has a negative impact at all, you know. We've all learned a lot, and it's been really insightful.
Well, thank you for enabling that to happen as well. Jack, any comments on this particular question?
I mean, what I think it comes down to is you know, thankfully I was part of a cohort that I think was determined to make it work. You know, you've got to be willing to approach it and make the most of it. And like the others have touched on, I think we had a selection of great speakers that we may have otherwise not been able to access if that had not been the case. You know, and I suppose as a, you know, a further point, our talk today, you know, we all met up via Zoom a couple of times to coordinate what we were doing and how we, you know, and things, and it worked. And you know, I suppose the viewers will decide, but I think we you know, we did all right. So it can be done with the right will and determination for sure, and you can still get a lot of.
Well, Jack, we've got this now for posterity, I think it's the word. We've got a great recording. I'm going to come to Darius before I finish with Yasmin. So Darius, any final thoughts there?
Yeah, I'll just kind of echo what Henrietta Carla mentioned about the kind of hybrid style. I personally enjoyed that a lot, the kind of variety with it as well. I also very much enjoyed the in-person event. I think as Carla was mentioning about the cohesion, I definitely felt that was probably the first moment that was probably the most enjoyable moment, to be honest. And yeah, I'd be very happy to continue working in a kind of hybrid way. Yeah.
Well, Yasmin, as somebody who's chaired this so eloquently, I'm going to ask you to have the final word on this particular question, and then I'm going to move on to the remaining two that I want to pick up on.
Thanks. So as I badly put in the chat, I tried to say the fact of the pandemic happening, the fact that we could actually do it hybridly was better than the programme not happening at all due to the pandemic. So I think that having that blend clearly worked out for most of us in our favour, but also the fact that the alternative would be the programme not happening, which would have been rubbish. So yeah, we definitely preferred the hybrid mix.
well, it's been great to manage it through that. And indeed, our first cohort was all in person, and a bit like Henrietta said, that took a little bit more time to organise, find the venues, and I think it also meant we had to look at identifying speakers regionally as opposed to nationally as well, and bringing in, so there were issues about how we managed that. There are a couple of questions about the programme itself. Now, first of all, I would like to just sort of say that we're in discussion about running a future cohort, and I think I can sort of informally say that, Jamie, thanks very much for committing IVG to supporting us in a third cohort. We look forward to sort of crossing the T's and dotting the I's in due course, but it means that there will be some succession and sustainability of our programme, and as has been said, we may even find that a couple of the colleagues will be willing to come back, bit like this year with Ella and Sarah, to come and share their insights and how they've developed. Because as Jack said, it's not just about hierarchical leadership, it's around the roles and responsibilities, and picking up that responsibility point that Richard talked about, that we've also wanted to draw on. So we are looking to recruit to a Future Leaders programme in the next financial year, so that'll be from April onwards. We will set out very clearly the specification and the conditions for that. I think, as Yasmin said right at the outset, this is about people in their early careers. It's not for people who've perhaps done 10, 15 for middle management, or wanting to progress into middle management or into more senior management. Very much for early career. And we will be sort of promoting and advertising that early in April, May time. So please do watch out for that. And please do encourage staff or colleagues who you feel would benefit from that, from joining us. So I hope that sort of gives some encouragement for people and some answers to the questions that have been posted in the Q&A box. We've got a few minutes to go. I see Jamie sort of moved from indoors to outdoors. So have you got any final comments before we draw this to a close, Jamie?
It's lucky I've got these headphones on, because the fire alarm went off halfway through this whole thing. So I've moved outside so I can escape, just in case it is a fire, if I'm being brutally honest. But it's, yeah, I mean, absolutely delighted to have been part of this session today. And as I said before, truly inspired by how well people have sort of responded to the challenges that face them at this stage in their careers. I think for those that are on and listening, I think as employers, we all have a right or an obligation on us to nurture talent. And I think we should all take learning and development very, very seriously, because without it, we're nothing. It's been a pleasure to spend time with you all today. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
Well, and Jamie, we look forward, as a LIN, working with you in the next cohort as well, and your team, and also drawing on, I know Ellen couldn't be with us today, but also her pearls of wisdom that she was able to record. But can I ask Richard to say a final few words before I sort of draw this to a close?
Sure. I mean, again, echoing what Jamie has said, and I just want to wish all the participants in future parts every success in your future career. I mean, it's tough, but it is so rewarding and fulfilling. And that's certainly been my experience, and I hope it will be yours too. And if I could put the clock back, I would do the same. I'd make the same choices again. I hope that you'll get to the point in your careers when that will be your experience too. So good luck with it all, and thank you.
Well, Richard, thank you. And can I, on behalf of the HousingLIN, both thank Richard and Jamie, who were sort of our first half speakers, but also, I don't think you've quite stolen the show, but you certainly, well, actually, you probably have stolen the show this afternoon and given a fantastic account, both of your own personal and professional developments. It's great to see you all blossoming and getting that balance that Richard was talking about, and as Jamie said, making an impact. As I said, we very much hope to promote our third course and third cohort early in the next financial year. But please do watch out for that through our weekly bulletin or through our email shots if you're not already a member of the HousingLIN. So that all leads me to do is to thank all of you for participating. I shan't go you through one by one, but you know who you are. It's been a fantastic session. Can I thank Jerome and Sally behind the scenes who helped make it all work so smoothly. I wish you a really pleasant afternoon, and I know that we'll be pulling together a recording, and hopefully that'll either be back out later this afternoon or first thing tomorrow. So on behalf of the HousingLIN, thank you everybody who's both watched and participated. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.